Hello friends, this is Worm, back today on January 2nd, second day of the year, the new year, sorry. And today I actually wanted to talk about the raid/dungeon rotators. Now, this idea came from Damien Baliu. I hope I said that right. If I didn't, I apologize. But he said a couple days ago he wanted to see a video on our thoughts on the raid/dungeon rotators. And this is something I'd kind of wanted to talk about in a video for a while now, but I never really found the time to do it. So thank you, bro, for pushing me to make this. But with that being said, he didn't detail anything specifically he wanted us to touch on, so I kind of just wanted to talk about the raid/dungeon rotator as a whole. Now, for those of y'all who may not be aware, the raid/dungeon rotator, I'm just going to call it the raid rotator from this point on, because dungeons, they already, like, you can already farm them. But the raid rotator is basically a system that Bungie put in the game to allow players to farm loot from older raids, right? So of course, starting with the oldest raid in Destiny 2, which is Last Wish, every week, starting at the start of a season, we go through this rotator, right? With Last Wish, then the next week, Garden of Salvation, then the next week, Deepstone Crypt, then the next week, Bolt of Glass, and the next week, Vow of Disciple, and the next week, King's Fall, and the next week, Root of Nightmares, and so on and so forth. And then once we get to Root of Nightmares, the following week after Root of Nightmares, it goes back to Last Wish, because of course, Crota's End is the most recent raid, and it's not been added to this rotational list or whatever. Now, what does this mean? This means that if there is a particular raid that is featured, you can go and you can farm that raid, you can farm each encounter as much as you want, and every time you complete it, you will get loot. So let's say you want to go farm Templar, and Vaults of Glass is the featured raid. You can go kill Templar 100 times, and you're going to get 100 rewards. And if you do the challenge 100 times, you're going to get 200 rewards, because you get double, you get double loots from doing the challenge for these raids. And Bungie implemented this because for years in Destiny, players begged, please give us a way to farm raid loot. Like, it was, I'm thinking back here to the D1 days, right? It was so much fun to do Vault of Glass 3 times a week, because it was very, very difficult. But after that, you basically did it for fun. You didn't get extra rewards. You didn't get, they didn't have spoils of conquest as a reward in Destiny 1. Like, you literally did it and you got nothing from it, which is incredible. And that really kind of sucked, because a lot of people want some raid weapons. Like, raid weapons have good loot. I'm sorry, raids have good loot. The raid weapons are very good. The raid armor often looks very good. And raid armor also drops pretty high stat, right? And so players have wanted to be able to grind raids. And so that's why Bungie introduced this raid rotator to Destiny 2. And it's got a lot of good that comes with it, but I think there are some negatives that come with it, and we're going to talk about each of those. But I want to start, of course, with the positives of having this raid rotating playlist. Of course, it allows raids to have it gives you a way to farm raids, right? And this is a big deal, because like I said before, we couldn't. Now, if I want to get out and I want to get my, Michael's Reverence, that's the most recent raid craftable weapon that I got a couple weeks ago. If I want to get out and get Michael's Reverence, I can. And I can go get it craftable, or maybe, if it's a Vault of Glass weapon, maybe I want to God roll Fatebringer, right? I can go out and I can farm the encounters, whichever encounter I want to, that drops the Fatebringer, until I get the roll that I want. And this is fantastic, because, raids like Deepstone Crypt and Atrax 1, that Atrax 1 boss fight is like 2 minutes long, right? If you do it right, and you can easily do the challenge. Like, you're getting double rewards every 2 minutes. So you're able to knock out those craftable weapons, boom, like that, which is absolutely fantastic. And maybe you don't have time to do, to grind it for the craftables. Maybe you don't care about the craftables, but it gives you a chance to get the god rolls that you're looking for. Maybe it's the god roll, Trusty. Maybe it's the god roll, Smite of Moraine. Maybe it's, whatever it is, it gives you a chance to get it. And I think that that's such a good thing, because again, players have been asking for that for a long time. Now, it's also divided up week by week. And I think that this is a good thing to have happen, because here's the reality of the raid rotating playlist. If Bungie didn't have this rotating playlist, and instead they just said, you know what, every raid that's not the most recently released one can be farmed as much as you want whenever you want. The reality of that is that raids like Garden of Salvation and maybe Vault of Glass and maybe Deepstone Crypts, they're not going to get farmed as much, right? And the reason why is because, Garden of Salvation, we'll take Garden of Salvation, for example. Garden of Salvation, the rolls on those weapons are so out of date. Like the best roll I can think of on like Ancient Gospel, for example, is like Outlaw and Dragonfly. That, in my opinion, that just sounds like an old school roll. Like I get world drops with Outlaw and Dragonfly on it now, right? And we're talking about a raid weapon. Now, back years ago in 2019, yeah, that was great. We didn't have any hand cannons with Outlaw and Dragonfly. But as time has gone on and we've got new weapons and stuff like that, these older raids, they're sunsets, essentially. Their power level technically still drops at its, whatever the current max level is, and you can infuse and stuff, but it's been power crept out of the game. So if I want to say, hey, I really want to test out, a Reckless Oracle, which is the Garden of Salvation auto rifle, I want to go out and find people to do it with me, right? The reality is, if Bungie allowed every raid to be farmable whenever they wanted it to, you would never find anybody for Garden of Salvation. Like, you would literally search for hours and hours and hours to find somebody. But when they concentrate people week by week, when they say, hey, you know what? It is now Garden Week. If you want Garden God rolls, go out there and get them. People are like, hey, it's time. I want to go farm X weapon or X, armor set or, whatever it is until I get what I'm looking for. And I think that is a good thing, but it's kind of a double-edged sword, right? Because as good as it is that Bungie has this playlist that we can go into and we can, farm out and get all the weapons and stuff that we want, there's a negative to it. And that negative is that we have to wait almost 2 months in between each raid that we want to do, right? And I think that Bungie has really tried as of lately to make the seasons based around the raid rotating playlist, right? Because every season it starts with Last Wish, right? It starts with Last Wish. Last Wish is the first raid of the season, followed by Garden of Salvation through the whole cycle. And then typically on the last week of the season, it's Root of Nightmares, because that's the most recent one to be added, right? But waiting for almost 2 months for your raid to be farmable is kind of ridiculous and kind of crazy, right? Like it means that if you start the game, say you start the game the week after, Deepstone Crypt is the farmable raid, and you grind and you power level your way up and you learn how the game works, and all of a sudden it's been 8 weeks. And now you're ready. Hey, I want to go get some in-game weapons. Well, guess what? Since it's been 8 weeks, that means you just missed Deepstone Crypt. Now you have to wait another month and 3 weeks, almost 4 months to be able to grind that again, right? Or God forbid you're out of town. I know that the week after next, the week of the 20th, I'm going out of town. My wife and my baby and I are going to be leaving town, and we're going to be gone for a whole week. Whatever the feature rate is of that week, I will not get a chance to grind it, and I'm going to have to wait another almost 2 months before I can get a chance to grind it again, which it's not an issue for me. I've kind of got all the craftable weapons I really, really care about. But still, it's like, if you're in the same boat, you're kind of screwed. And not only that, but I think that it does put pressure on players. Like anytime there's free time, say it's Deepstone Crypt and you really want the Deepstone Crypt weapons, anytime there's free time, you need to be in there doing that raid to get the rolls and the crafted weapons that you want. So like, let's say Iron Banner also falls on the week. Well, crap, now you want to do Iron Banner and you want to do, this raid, or even worse, like if it's for me, let's say it's Double Infamy. I don't know about y'all, I'm not a fan of Gambit, so when Double Infamy comes around, that's when I get all my Gambit stuff done, right? When Double or Triple Infamy is afoot, I'm like, hey, I gotta do it because I want to get it done. I don't want to mess with this in 2 or 3 weeks. I want to get whatever it is I'm looking for from it, right? And that's kind of one of the things that, yeah, it sucks. Now, of course, it's not that big of a deal, except for the fact you have to wait for 2 months. And that's really what it all loops back around to, is waiting for 2 whole months. Almost 2 whole months is ridiculous. And technically, by the time Final Shape drops and Crota's Inn is added to that rotating raid playlist, or weekly raid, whatever it's called, rotator, it is going to be 2 months. You're gonna have to wait 2 months before you can do Last Wish again. You're gonna have to wait 2 months before you can do, Deep Stone Crypt. And I know that there's a lot of really hardcore players that say, well, it's fine, just go, one phase Aatrax and get 2 of those weapons knocked out in, just a couple hours. Go farm Kali. In Last Wish, you can literally get all the weapons from Kali. You can get all red borders from one encounter that takes like 3 minutes to do, and you get double rewards. That's the hardcore players that say that, right? Like, that's players like myself. That's something I would have said without consideration, that not everybody has that time investment. Not everybody has just hours and hours and hours and hours a week that they can dump into playing a raid. Not everybody has the allotted time. Maybe you can play for a couple hours a week, but it's only, in 30-minute segments. Like, really, you can get some runs done, but the time it takes to set up your fire team, to get everybody in place, to replace people who leave and come back, I mean, you're looking at maybe 3 or 4 completions of a raid encounter, unless you have a team that is hardcore dedicated with you, at which point at most you can probably get 7 or 8 in that 30-minute time span. Like, that's the issue. And again, I want to be the voice for the common player, right? The average player. The average player likely doesn't have the same amount of time investment to put into these raid playlists, right? I mean, I know that, if I was in a more casual situation, I would have to look at, hey, what one weapon do I want to get? What one weapon do I want to try to concentrate and farm? Because that's what I had to do with Deep Stone Crypt when they became craftable. Posterity. Nobody wants to do the 3rd encounter of Deep Stone Crypt. That's the only encounter that drops posterity. So I had to get in there, and I had to do it for 5 weeks till I get my 5, things to buy the pattern from killing the final boss, right? Because you can't even, well, we'll talk about that in a second, but it's a time investment that players have to invest the time in, so to speak. I'm sorry, I'm just repeating myself here, but like, that's something that casual players can't afford the same way that's a hardcore player like myself or like other content creators can. Now, of course, like I said, it is a double-edged sword, because if Bungie just said, hey, open the floodgates, let players do whatever raid they want to do whenever they want to do it, you're never going to find teams for some of those less popular raids. Garden of Salvation, I guarantee you'd never find a team for Garden of Salvation. Hell, Garden of Salvation, when it's the featured raid, you can't even find teams for it because the loot is so out of date. And it's cool loot, like the weapons, they look good. Like Sacred Provenance, the pulse rifle is an insanely good pulse rifle. Like, that pulse rifle is a beast. The hand cannon, I love the hand cannon, the way it shoots, the way it sounds, the way it sounds, the sniper, Omniscient Eye, it's a great sniper, right? But it's hard to find a team for, and the raid rotating playlist helps to condense that, which is why, like, it'd be problematic to remove that. But then again, you can't just remove it and say, you know what, you can't farm anything, because that's going to upset players. Like, we've had the ability to farm stuff. Now, what of course could Bungie do about it? I don't really know. I mean, the reality is I don't know. Maybe at some point, I feel like they're probably going to have to go into a system where they double up on raids, right? This week it is Last Wish and Root of Nightmares. And then next week it'll be Root of Nightmares and Last Wish and, or let's say first week of the season is Last Wish and Garden of Salvation. Then the next week it's Garden of Salvation and Deep Stone Crypt. Then the next week it's Deep Stone Crypt and whatever that one is. That way the featured raid for that week is like available for 2 weeks at a time. Like, that's the only way I could really see maybe it working out for Bungie, especially with the current seasonal model, which, yes, I know the seasonal model is going away, right? And I think that they probably have planned that out, with the whole, the episodes that we're moving into, because episodes are going to be 4 months apart instead of 3 months apart, So I think that Bungie has kind of thought about that and thought ahead, which, props to them, they're smart for that stuff. But I don't know, like, I like the idea of the raid rotating playlist. I like that it exists. I just don't like how long it takes for those raids to come back around, which I think the pros do outweigh the cons. Obviously, the ability to farm Deep Stone Crypt and easily find a team for it is great. I want that. I want to keep that, even though I have to wait 2 months. If I don't get the god roll I'm looking for, or the crafted roll that I'm looking for in whatever week, I have to wait another almost 2 months before I can get it again. Like, I'm honestly, I'm fine with that, right? But yeah, that's my thoughts on the raid rotating playlist. Again, dungeons, I'll talk about dungeons real quick here. Dungeons, they don't really fall under the same criteria. Like, you can farm dungeons as much as you want. Even the most recently released dungeon, Warlord's Ruin, you can sit there and farm it as much and as long as you want, and you'll still get rewards from it. So I think that the dungeon rotator playlist isn't quite as big of a deal as the raid rotating playlist. But yeah, I mean, Damien, I hope that that's kind of the thoughts that you were looking to hear. Of course, anybody watching this, I want to hear your thoughts on the raid rotating playlist. You know, how do you feel about the double-edged sword? The fact that, hey, like, because Bungie is able to concentrate raids by a weekly basis, it increases the player base, you know, within those raids, but also we got to wait 2 months, almost 2 months. Somebody's going to correct me. Almost 2 months between getting those. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Of course, if you like today's video, drop a like. Helps the video out a lot, or helps the channel out a lot, sorry. Subscribe for more daily Destiny content and conversations such as this one. And yeah, I'll see y'all next time. Oh yeah, watch the videos you see on the end screen, because for whatever reason, YouTube thinks you'll like them. Guys, I will see y'all next time. Bye for now.